Ibrahim Traoré trails his most loyal guard. What he finds is a life he never expected. The evening shadows stretched long across the presidential palace courtyard in Ouagadougou as Ibrahim Traoré stood at his office window, watching his most trusted guard slip away through the side gate. This marked the third time this week. Ahmed had disappeared after his shift, offering only the vaguest explanations when questioned. Something had changed in the man who had taken bullets for him during the coup that brought Traoré to power less than a year ago. Ibrahim turned from the window, his reflection in the polished marble floor distorted by worry. The weight of Burkina Faso rested on his 34-year-old shoulders, a nation torn by insurgency, poverty, and the growing pains of revolution. He could trust few people in this palace of whispers and shifting loyalties, but Ahmed had always been the exception. Until now. "Sir, the ministers are waiting in the conference room," his aide announced from the doorway. Ibrahim nodded, straightening his military uniform. "Tell them 5 minutes." When the aide departed, he pulled out his phone and scrolled to a security report filed that morning. Another bombing in the northern provinces, more villages emptied, more children orphaned. As president, he commanded armies, but solutions remained elusive. The same problems kept him awake at night, along with a growing suspicion about the man tasked with guarding his sleep. Ahmed had saved his life 3 times during the coup. Could his most trusted guard now be plotting against him? Or was there something else behind these mysterious disappearances? Before we continue, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. The memory of gunfire still visited Ibrahim in dreams. The day he and Ahmed had found themselves pinned behind an overturned truck as loyalist forces closed in. Ahmed, then just another soldier in the revolutionary forces, had dragged Ibrahim to safety despite a bullet in his own shoulder. They had been strangers until that moment, united only by a shared vision for a Burkina Faso, free from corruption. In the months that followed, Ahmed became more than a bodyguard. He became the silent shadow Ibrahim could depend on when everyone else's motivations remained suspect. Ibrahim paced his private quarters as midnight approached, the palace falling silent around him. He paused at his desk, fingers brushing over intelligence reports of growing unrest in neighboring regions. Coup attempts never truly ended. They merely retreated into whispers and side glances. Trust was a luxury he could rarely afford. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Ahmed entered, his uniform impeccable despite the late hour. "Mr. President, I've completed the security sweep. All clear for the night." Ibrahim studied his guard's face, the eyes that seemed more tired than usual. A fresh cut on his right hand, poorly concealed by a hasty bandage. "Thank you, Ahmed. You look exhausted. Perhaps you should take tomorrow off." "That won't be necessary, sir." Ahmed's posture remained rigid, professional. "I should be here." "Like you were here yesterday evening." Ibrahim kept his tone casual. "I noticed you left early." Something flickered across Ahmed's face. Not guilt, exactly, but caution. "A personal matter, sir. Nothing that compromised your security." Ibrahim nodded, pretending to accept the explanation. "Of course. You're entitled to your own life." After Ahmed departed, Ibrahim moved to his private office and unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. The clothing inside was nothing special. Worn jeans, a faded t-shirt, scuffed work boots, and a cap pulled from a local brewing company, all collected by an aide tasked with discretion. Clothes that would transform him from president to ordinary citizen. The disguise of the common man he once was. As he changed, his secure phone buzzed with an intelligence alert. He checked it quickly, heart accelerating when he saw the message. Ahmed making a call from the guard's quarters, language coded but concerning. Attached was a brief audio clip. "I'll be there tonight," Ahmed's voice said quietly. "The situation with the other life is becoming complicated. They need me more than ever, especially with the new arrivals." Ibrahim's hand tightened around the phone. Other life? New arrivals? The language of conspiracy, of militia recruitment, of betrayal. The clock showed just past midnight when Ibrahim, now unrecognizable in his civilian clothes, slipped through rarely used service corridors, and past the skeletal night staff. None looked twice at the unremarkable man who kept his head down. The presidential motorcade remained parked as he chose instead a battered motorcycle from the staff transport area, one that would attract no attention in the crowded streets of Ouagadougou. The city transformed at night, becoming a maze of shadows and yellow streetlights, of small fires where vendors still cooked late meals, of music spilling from doorways. Ibrahim had grown up in these streets before military academy, before revolution, before power replaced freedom. Now he navigated them as a ghost, keeping Ahmed's motorcycle just visible ahead. They traveled beyond the government quarter, past the commercial district, into neighborhoods that grew progressively poorer. Here the scars of recent conflicts remained unhealed, buildings still showing bullet holes, infrastructure crumbling, people gathering around communal water points. Even at this late hour, Ahmed parked his motorcycle near a small intersection and continued on foot. Ibrahim followed at a distance, heart pounding with each step. His guard moved with purpose down a narrow alley, stopping to speak briefly with a young man who emerged from the shadows. Ibrahim pressed himself against a wall, straining to hear. "They can't wait much longer," the young man said urgently. "The little one especially." Ahmed nodded. "I brought what I could. Lead the way." They disappeared into a doorway marked only by a faded red cross painted above the frame. No guards, no security, no signs of militant gathering. Not what Ibrahim had expected. He waited several minutes before approaching the building, rehearsing explanations should he be discovered. The president conducting a surprise inspection, a concerned citizen reporting suspicious activity. The truth was simpler and more damning. A leader who no longer trusted his most loyal servant. The building's interior smelled of antiseptic and cooking spices, an incongruous combination that caught Ibrahim off guard as he slipped through the entrance. He pulled his cap lower, hunching his shoulders in the universal posture of someone who wished to remain unnoticed. Voices echoed from down a dimly lit hallway. Ahmed's among them, but transformed, warmer and more animated than Ibrahim had ever heard at the palace. Following the sound, Ibrahim found himself at the threshold of what had once been a small warehouse, now converted into an open space filled with makeshift beds. Children occupied most of them, some sleeping, others awake and watching with large, serious eyes as adults moved among them. The youngest couldn't have been more than 4, the oldest perhaps 14. All bore the visible marks of displacement. The thinness, the wariness, the too old expressions. And there was Ahmed, kneeling beside a small girl with bandaged arms, speaking so gently that Ibrahim had to strain to hear. "See? I promised I would come back, and have I ever broken a promise to you, Issa?" The child shook her head solemnly before breaking into a smile that illuminated her entire face. "Professor Diallo, look. I can write my name now." She proudly held up a piece of paper, covered in careful if wobbly letters. Professor Diallo. The name hit Ibrahim like a physical blow. His trusted guard had constructed an entire separate identity, not for subversion or betrayal, but for this. "That's beautiful work, Isa. Tomorrow we'll start on your brother's name too." A young woman approached, carrying medical supplies. She wore a simple hijab and moved with the confident efficiency of someone accustomed to crisis. "Ahmed, thank goodness. The antibiotics you brought last week made all the difference for the new children. But we're almost out again." Ahmed, Professor Diallo, rose to greet her, his hand briefly touching hers in a gesture that spoke of deep familiarity. "Fatima, how many new arrivals since Tuesday?" 7 more. A village near the northern border was attacked. These were the only ones who... She glanced at the children and left the sentence unfinished. "The little boy with the fever still hasn't improved. I was about to try the last of the medicine." Ibrahim faded back against the wall, processing what he was witnessing. This was no conspiracy, no betrayal, unless one counted the betrayal of protocol, of direct reporting, of the invisibly thick line between those who governed and those who suffered under governance. He watched as Ahmed administered medication to a small boy burning with fever, his movements confident and practiced. Where had his guard learned such skills? Ibrahim had read Ahmed's file thoroughly before appointing him. Military training, distinguished service, impeccable loyalty, nothing about medical knowledge or work with orphaned children. "You have a visitor," one of the older children announced, pointing directly at Ibrahim. Heads turned, including Ahmed's. For a moment, the two men stared at each other across the room. Guard and president, separated by 20 feet and an entire hidden world. But recognition didn't dawn in Ahmed's eyes. The disguise, simple as it was, held firm. "Can I help you, brother?" Ahmed asked, his tone cautious but not alarmed. Ibrahim cleared his throat, pitching his voice slightly higher than normal. "I heard there might be work. My cousin said you sometimes need extra hands." The lie came easily, born of years navigating political delicacies. Fatima approached him, studying his face. "Who is your cousin?" "Musa," Ibrahim said, naming one of the palace gardeners whose family came from this district. "He mentioned this place needed help sometimes." Her suspicion softened slightly. "We always need help. Can you read? We need someone to continue lessons while Ahmed tends to the sick ones." Before Ibrahim could answer, commotion erupted at the entrance. 3 men pushed their way inside, their postures radiating the casual menace of those accustomed to intimidation. The leader, a tall man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, surveyed the room with calculated slowness. "Professor Diallo," the man drawled, emphasizing the title mockingly. "It's that time again. The neighborhood protection fee has increased. Too many military patrols disrupting business lately." Ahmed straightened, positioning himself between the men and the children. "Bakari, we had an agreement. First week of the month only, and the amount was fixed." Bakari shrugged elaborately. "Inflation affects us all, Professor. Even presidents struggle with it, or so they say on the radio. 5,000 CFA. Now." "I don't have that much on me," Ahmed said, his voice quiet but firm. "You'll need to wait until next week." Bakari's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Perhaps we should take payment in other forms. Medical supplies fetch good prices, or perhaps your pretty colleague could—" "Enough." Ahmed's voice cut through the room like a blade. Ibrahim watched, fascinated. This was a side of his guard he'd never witnessed. The steel beneath the quiet service. "You'll get your money next week. The usual amount. Now leave before you frighten the children more than you already have." The tension stretched between them like an overwhelmed spring. Finally, Bakari smiled, revealing a gold tooth. "Your luck won't last forever, Professor. Everyone's protection runs out eventually." His gaze swept meaningfully over the children before he turned to leave, his companions following. As the door closed behind them, the room collectively exhaled. Ibrahim found himself pressed into service immediately. Fatima handing him a book and pointing to a group of wide-eyed children. "Since you're here to help, start with these ones. Basic letters. Can you manage that?" Ibrahim nodded, finding himself seated on a threadbare mat, surrounded by small faces regarding him with solemn curiosity. When was the last time anyone had looked at him without awareness of his title, without either fear or calculated respect? The next hours passed in a blur as Ibrahim found himself fully absorbed in the task. He taught letters to children who had lost everything yet still hungered for knowledge. He carried water and helped serve a simple meal. He observed Ahmed, Professor Diallo, moving through this hidden world with an ease and purpose that seemed to complete him in ways his palace role never could. "You're good with them," Fatima said, appearing beside Ibrahim as he helped a small boy sound out syllables. "Most new volunteers get overwhelmed. They're resilient," Ibrahim replied, careful to maintain his disguise. "How long has this place existed?" "Almost 2 years. After the coup, there were so many displaced children. The government promised care centers. But," she shrugged, the gesture eloquently conveying the gap between political promises and ground reality. "Ahmed started it with his military salary. I was a medical student before everything fell apart. We do what we can. And Ahmed? He works for the government." Ibrahim probed carefully. Something guarded flickered across her face. "He has a day job. That's all you need to know." Their conversation was interrupted by shouts from the entrance. A woman burst in, carrying a limp child in her arms. blood soaking through a makeshift bandage. "Please help. The clinics are closed, and he's burning with fever." Ahmed and Fatima rushed forward, clearing a space on one of the examination tables. The boy couldn't have been more than 6, his small body racked with tremors, as Ahmed carefully removed the blood-soaked wrappings from his leg. "Infected machete wound," Ahmed murmured to Fatima. "We need to clean it immediately and start antibiotics." "We used the last vial on Kofi," she replied tensely. "Then we need to cool him down and clean the wound thoroughly. Boil water. Get the emergency kit." Ahmed's voice remained steady, even as his expression betrayed his concern. Ibrahim found himself pulled into the crisis. "What can I do?" "Hold him still," Ahmed instructed, passing him clean cloths. "Keep pressure here while I prepare the antiseptic." The child cried out as they worked, his small hand gripping Ibrahim's with surprising strength. Ibrahim found himself whispering reassurances, promises of safety that as president he had made many times in speeches, but never like this. One human to another, no podium between them, no cameras to record the moment. As they struggled to bring down the child's fever, shouts erupted outside. Fatima ran to the window. "Police," she hissed. "Someone must have reported us operating an unlicensed clinic again." Ahmed's face hardened with determination. "Get the children to the back room. Use the exit we prepared." The room erupted into quiet, practiced chaos as older children helped the younger ones toward a concealed door. Ahmed continued working on the injured boy, unwilling to abandon his patient even as heavy fists pounded on the entrance. "Open up. City health inspection." Ibrahim felt the walls of his carefully constructed disguise beginning to crumble. The police would recognize him instantly. His presence here would create questions, headlines, political complications, yet he couldn't abandon the child whose life literally rested in his hands. The door burst open. 2 police officers entered, followed by a captain whose eyes methodically catalogued the room. The medical supplies, the children's drawings on the walls, the evidence of an operation far outside legal parameters. "Professor Diallo, I warned you last time this place would be shut down without proper permits." The captain approached the table where they worked, his gaze passing over Ibrahim briefly before snapping back, eyes widening in shock. "Wait," he said slowly. "Don't I know you?" The room crystallized into perfect stillness as the police captain's face transformed from confusion to shock to a peculiar kind of terror. Ibrahim watched the realization ripple outward. First the captain, then his officers, and finally Ahmed, whose face drained of all color as worlds that were never meant to intersect suddenly crashed together with the force of colliding planets. "Mr. President," the captain's voice emerged strangled, caught between protocol and disbelief. The child moaned beneath Ibrahim's hands, breaking the frozen tableau. "Yes, Captain," Ibrahim replied, not looking up from the wound he was still compressing. "And as you can see, we're in the middle of saving this child's life. I suggest you assist us, rather than interrupt." The police officers stood paralyzed by competing imperatives, to follow procedure on an illegal clinic or to obey their commander-in-chief, who was impossibly kneeling on the dirt floor in civilian clothes. Ahmed had not moved, his hands still working mechanically to prepare antiseptic, though his eyes never left Ibrahim's face. The careful mask of professional distance he always wore at the palace had shattered, revealing naked vulnerability that made him suddenly seem younger, more human. "Mr. President," Ahmed finally spoke, his voice barely audible over the child's pained whimpers. "I never meant to deceive you. This is who I was before I became your guard." Ibrahim met his gaze steadily. "Why keep this secret? Why not tell me? Leaders cannot show favoritism. I needed to protect both worlds separately." Ahmed's hands trembled slightly as he applied antiseptic to the wound. "These children, they were displaced by the very conflicts that brought us to power. I couldn't abandon them, but I couldn't risk your position by asking for special treatment." Fatima stood frozen by the supply cabinet, eyes darting between them as comprehension dawned. "You're President Ibrahim Traoré," the captain supplied unnecessarily, still struggling with the protocol for finding his nation's leader in a slum clinic after midnight. The moment hung between them, confession, revelation, the crumbling of carefully constructed walls. Then the injured child seized violently, his small body arching off the table. "He's convulsing," Ahmed shouted, professionalism instantly replacing shock. "Fatima, we need to break the fever now." The crisis reclaimed them all. Ibrahim found himself taking orders from his own bodyguard, fetching water while Fatima prepared emergency medication. The police captain, after a moment's hesitation, sent his officers for ice from a nearby vendor. Hierarchy dissolved in the face of immediate need. 20 tense minutes later, the child's fever had broken. His breathing steadied. As Fatima settled him onto a recovery mat, Ibrahim pulled Ahmed into the small adjacent room that served as an office and storage space. "How long have you been running this place?" Ibrahim asked without preamble. Since before the coup, Ahmed stood at military attention, as though preparing for court-martial. "I was stationed in the northern provinces. I saw what happened to villages caught between insurgents and military responses. So many orphaned children with nowhere to go. And your salary? The guards' quarters, where you supposedly live? Minimal expenses for myself. The rest comes here." Ahmed hesitated. "Sir, I accept full responsibility for my deception. My resignation." "No." Ibrahim's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "You misunderstand the situation entirely." Before Ahmed could respond, commotion erupted again from the main room. Louder this time. Voices raised in anger. They rushed back to find Bakari and 5 men more heavily armed than before, facing off against the police officers. Well, Bakari drawled, apparently unintimidated by the police presence. "Twice in one night. We heard there was trouble, Professor. Came to make sure our investment was protected." The police captain stepped forward. "This is an official operation. Leave immediately." Bakari laughed, revealing his gold tooth again. "Official? In this neighborhood? Nothing happens here without our permission, officer. We provide the real protection around here." His gaze traveled across the room, cataloging faces, stopping abruptly when he reached Ibrahim. Something flickered in his expression. A moment of uncertainty, as though trying to place a half-remembered face. Ibrahim made his decision in that instant. He stepped forward, straightening to his full height, shedding the slouched posture of his disguise. When he spoke, he used his public voice, the one that had rallied troops and addressed nations. "I believe you're mistaken about who controls this district, or any district in Burkina Faso." Bakari's eyes narrowed, then widened in stunned recognition. His companions shifted uneasily, hands moving toward concealed weapons before freezing as the implications registered. "This clinic," Ibrahim continued into the shocked silence, "is now under my direct protection, as is everyone in it." "Mr. President," the police captain interjected urgently. "These men are known criminals." "I'm well aware, Captain." Ibrahim never broke eye contact with Bakari. "And I believe your department has outstanding warrants for extortion, illegal weapons possession, and threatening government-protected facilities. Isn't that correct?" The captain's confusion cleared. "Yes, sir. Multiple warrants." "Then I suggest you execute those warrants immediately." Ibrahim's voice was mild, but carried the unmistakable weight of absolute authority. What followed was surprisingly anticlimactic. Bakari and his men, caught between bravado and self-preservation, chose the latter. The police, energized by their president's direct attention, efficiently disarmed and restrained the gang members. As they were led away, Bakari twisted to deliver a parting shot. "Even presidents don't live forever. Traoré, remember that when you're back in your palace." When they had gone, silence descended once more. The children who had hidden during the confrontation began to emerge from the back room, eyes wide with confusion at the night's strange turns. The small boy with fever slept peacefully, oblivious to the power struggles that had swirled around his sickbed. Ibrahim found Ahmed standing apart, his posture suggesting a man awaiting sentence. Beyond him, Fatima watched with guarded hope and fear commingled on her face. "Ahmed," Ibrahim said, "walk with me." They stepped outside into the alley behind the clinic. The eastern sky showed the first hint of approaching dawn, the stars beginning to fade. For a long moment they stood in silence, leader and protector, each seeing the other truly for the first time. "I should have told you," Ahmed finally said. "It was a breach of trust." "Yes," Ibrahim agreed. "It was." Ahmed nodded, accepting the judgment. "What happens now?" Ibrahim studied the lightening sky. "When I followed you tonight, I expected to uncover treachery. Instead, I found the leader I myself need to become." Ahmed looked up, startled. "I sit in that palace," Ibrahim continued, "reading reports about displaced children, about lack of medical care, about communities disrupted by conflict. But reports are just paper." This he gestured toward the clinic. "This is reality. You've kept one foot in both worlds." "Ahmed, I've lost touch with one of them entirely." "Sir, no, listen, I won't accept your resignation. Instead, I'm giving you a promotion." "A promotion?" "From today, you will serve as both my personal guard and my official community liaison. Your clinic will receive proper government funding and protection." Miss Fatima. She was a medical student, yes. Her education will be completed at government expense. Ahmed's carefully maintained composure finally broke. "Mr. President." "Ibrahim," he corrected quietly. "Here, in this place with these children, I am Ibrahim. The president stays at the palace." The first ray of sunlight broke over the horizon, illuminating the tear that tracked unashamedly down Ahmed's face. "Thank you, Ibrahim." "Don't thank me yet," Ibrahim replied with the first genuine smile he had felt in months. "We have a great deal of work ahead of us, starting with getting proper antibiotics for that child inside." As they turned back toward the clinic, Ahmed paused. "May I ask why? Why not simply fire me for the deception?" Ibrahim considered the question carefully. "Because a leader who loses touch with his people's suffering is no leader at all. He's just another man in a comfortable chair, moving pieces on a board. You reminded me of that tonight." He placed a hand on Ahmed's shoulder. "Now let's go tell Fatima that she's about to become the director of Burkina Faso's first community-based children's clinic. I suspect she may have some strong opinions about how we should proceed." Together they walked back into the building where a room full of children, the future of their troubled nation, were beginning to wake with the new day. The news swept through Ouagadougou like wildfire. President Traoré discovered in the heart of the city's poorest district, personally intervening to save a clinic for orphaned children. The palace press office, caught completely off guard, scrambled to frame the narrative, while social media exploded with grainy cell phone footage of the president in civilian clothes, helping load supplies into the newly government-sanctioned community center. Ibrahim watched the media storm from his office, scanning headlines that ranged from glowing praise to cynical political calculations. Some lauded his hands-on approach, calling it a revolutionary model of leadership. Others questioned the security protocols that allowed the president to wander unprotected through dangerous neighborhoods. Opposition voices suggested the entire episode was a carefully staged publicity stunt. "They're missing the point entirely," Ibrahim murmured, setting down his tablet as Ahmed entered the office. His guard, now officially designated as presidential community liaison, in addition to his security role, had maintained his professional demeanor within the palace walls, though something fundamental had shifted in their relationship. "The media usually does, sir." Ahmed placed a folder on the desk. "The preliminary budget for the clinic expansion. Fatima has been quite thorough with her requests." Ibrahim smiled, opening the folder. "I expected nothing less." "How is she adapting to her new role?" "With remarkable efficiency. She's already identified 3 other informal clinics in neighboring districts that could be brought into the network. And she's assembled a list of medical students whose education was interrupted by the conflicts." Ahmed hesitated. "She also asked me to thank you for expediting her readmission to the medical program. The least I could do." Ibrahim reviewed the budget figures, noting the careful allocation of resources. "And the children? How are they responding to the changes?" "Most are simply grateful for regular meals and medication. The oldest ones remained suspicious. They've seen too many promises broken. Ahmed's voice softened. Issa asked if you would come back to finish the reading lesson you started. Ibrahim looked up from the papers. Surprised. Does she remember me? She calls you the quiet teacher. Says you were patient with her when she struggled with the letter combinations. A strange warmth spread through Ibrahim's chest. In his previous life, before the military, before the coup, he had trained as a teacher himself. That path had been abandoned. As Burkina Faso's political situation deteriorated, exchanging textbooks for tactical manuals, he hadn't thought about that lost future in years. Perhaps I will visit again, he said, surprised by how much the idea appealed to him. Their conversation was interrupted by a security alert on Ibrahim's phone. He checked it, his expression darkening. There's been another attack near the northern border. 3 villages this time. Ahmed nodded grimly. The pattern is expanding. More children will be displaced. More orphans for your clinic. Ibrahim stood, moving to the large map of Burkina Faso that dominated his office wall. Red pins marked sites of recent violence, forming an irregular constellation across the northern regions. We're treating symptoms, not causes. Sometimes treating symptoms is all we can do while searching for the cure, Ahmed replied. Ibrahim traced the pattern of attacks, mind working through strategic implications. Have you spoken with the clinic children about what they witnessed? Who attacked their villages? Some speak of men with covered faces. Others mention foreign languages. Many are too traumatized to provide reliable accounts. Ahmed joined him at the map. Why do you ask? Because children see things adults miss. They notice details without understanding their significance. Ibrahim tapped an area where attacks had clustered. Next time you visit the clinic, bring Captain Diallo with you. He specializes in gathering intelligence from civilian witnesses. You think the children might provide useful information? I think we've been ignoring our most valuable witnesses because they're young and traumatized. Ibrahim turned from the map. This connects to something larger. We need to start listening more carefully. The following days brought a whirlwind of activity, as Ibrahim's impromptu visit catalyzed changes that rippled through the government. What had begun as one guard's secret mission transformed into a formal initiative, with funding redirected from military operations to community support centers throughout the capital. The presidential schedule now included weekly community immersion days, visits to neighborhoods typically ignored by those in power, conducted with minimal security and maximum engagement. Not everyone embraced these changes. At the emergency cabinet meeting 1 week after the clinic incident, the defense minister made his objections clear. This new approach compromises security protocols that exist for good reason, Mr. President, he insisted, visibly frustrated. And redirecting military funding will hamper our operations against insurgent groups. Our current strategy isn't working, Minister. Ibrahim remained calm but firm. We've been fighting symptoms rather than causes. These community centers give us intelligence we can't gather through traditional channels. Intelligence from children? The minister's tone bordered on derisive. Intelligence from citizens who have witnessed attacks firsthand. Ibrahim corrected. And yes, many of them are children. That doesn't make their observations less valuable. The minister subsided, though his expression remained skeptical. After the meeting, Ibrahim found Ahmed waiting in the corridor. You heard? Ibrahim asked as they walked toward his office. Most of it. Not everyone supports your new direction. Change always meets resistance. Ibrahim paused at a window overlooking the palace grounds. How many of the cabinet ministers have actually visited the districts affected by these policies? How many have spoken directly with the people we claim to serve? Ahmed remained diplomatically silent. That's what I thought. Ibrahim resumed walking. I've scheduled visits for every minister to different community centers over the next month. They can explain directly to the people why military spending should take priority over medical care and education. When they reached the office, they found Fatima waiting, her expression troubled. Her new position gave her direct access to the president on matters concerning the community centers, an arrangement that had raised eyebrows throughout the administration. Mr. President, she greeted him formally, Through her eyes conveyed a warmth reserved for the man who had knelt beside her, treating wounded children. "We have a situation at the main center." "What kind of situation?" Ibrahim asked. "One of Bakari's men came by this morning. He was alone, unarmed." She hesitated. "He asked to volunteer." Ibrahim exchanged a glance with Ahmed. "One of the gang members? Volunteering?" "He said he's been watching the changes in the neighborhood. He has medical training, was a paramedic before the conflicts disrupted everything." Fatima's expression remained guarded. "I told him I needed to consult with you first." Ibrahim considered the implications. "What do you think, Fatima? You've developed good instincts about people." "I think," she chose her words carefully, "I think people can change when given the opportunity. But I also think trust must be earned, not freely given." A measured approach. Then, Ibrahim nodded. "Let him volunteer under supervision. No access to medications or vulnerable children initially. If he proves himself trustworthy, we can reassess." Fatima smiled, visibly relieved. "That's what I hoped you would say." After she left, Ibrahim found Ahmed watching him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. "What?" Ibrahim asked.
"You're different," Ahmed observed. "Since that night."
Ibrahim moved to his desk, considering the observation. "Not different. Reconnected. Perhaps. To the person I was before power complicated everything." He picked up a handwritten letter, one of dozens that had arrived from citizens since news of his clinic visit spread. "I became president through conflict. Ahmed, that shapes how people see me, how I see myself. But before I was a soldier, I was just a man who wanted to teach, to build rather than destroy. And now I remember that building is harder than destroying, but infinitely more valuable." Ibrahim set the letter down. "Speaking of building, how is the fever boy recovering?" "Kofi?" Ahmed's face brightened. "Walking again. The infection has cleared completely. The doctor says he'll have a slight limp, but otherwise make a full recovery. He asks about you almost daily." The man in the cap who held his hand. The simplicity of the connection struck Ibrahim with unexpected force. Not President Traoré, not the military leader, not the figurehead, just the man who had held a frightened child's hand during a moment of pain. 3 weeks after the night that had changed everything, Ibrahim stood on the rooftop of the presidential palace, watching the sunset paint Ouagadougou in shades of gold and amber. Ahmed joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. "The ministers are complaining about their community center visits," Ahmed reported, handing Ibrahim a steaming cup. "The defense minister had to help repair a water pump in the eastern district yesterday, said it was beneath his dignity." Ibrahim smiled. "Did he fix it?" "Eventually. The local women supervised quite thoroughly." A hint of amusement colored Ahmed's voice. "He may understand your perspective better now." They drank their tea in companionable silence, watching darkness settle over the city. Lights flickered on across the urban landscape, fewer in the poorer districts, creating patches of darkness that mapped inequality more accurately than any government survey. Captain Diallo's report came in. Ahmed said finally. "About the children's accounts of the attacks." Ibrahim tensed slightly. "And you were right. They noticed things our intelligence missed. Foreign accents, specific weapons, a consistent leader. They described as having a scarred neck." Ahmed handed him a folder. "There's a pattern emerging. These aren't random insurgent attacks. They're coordinated, professional." Ibrahim opened the folder, scanning the compiled testimonies. "So young to witness such violence. Yes, but also young enough to heal, with proper support." Ahmed hesitated. "Fatima has been amazing with them. She has a gift for helping them process the trauma." Something in his tone made Ibrahim look up. "You and Fatima. There's something between you." Ahmed's professional mask slipped, revealing a flash of vulnerability. "There was before the coup, before I became your guard. We had plans, medical school for her, a teaching position for me. Then the world changed. And now, I don't know. Everything is different. My position, a new role." Ahmed stared out at the city. She hasn't said anything, but I see how she watches me when she thinks I'm not looking. Ibrahim closed the folder. Life doesn't wait for politics to settle. Ahmed, if there's one thing I've learned these past weeks, it's that we can't postpone living while waiting for the perfect moment. Sir, Ibrahim, he corrected gently. At least when we're not in official meetings. Ahmed nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Ibrahim. Thank you. As night fully claimed the city, Ibrahim reflected on the strange turns that had led him here. A president who had discovered his humanity by following a guard who had never lost his. A nation beginning to heal through its children. A relationship rekindled amidst the ruins of conflict. Small lights in gathering darkness, but lights nonetheless. 3 months transformed the makeshift clinic beyond recognition. What had once been a hidden sanctuary operating in shadows now stood as a gleaming beacon in the community. The People's Center, as the freshly painted sign proclaimed in bold letters. The warehouse space had been renovated, expanded, and properly equipped. Children who had once huddled on thin mats now attended classes in actual classrooms, received treatment in a proper medical facility, and played in a courtyard protected by guards who answered not to local gangs but to the government itself. Ibrahim stood at the periphery of the opening ceremony, deliberately dressed in simple clothing rather than his military uniform. This wasn't a day for presidential pomp, it was a celebration of what people could build together when given the chance. Around him, the crowd represented a cross-section of Burkina Faso. Rarely seen in one place, government officials mingled with local residents, medical professionals chatted with former gang members now employed as security, and through it all the children moved like bright fish in a human sea. They're calling it the Traoré Initiative, Ahmed murmured, appearing at his side. Like Ibrahim, he wore civilian clothes, the guard uniform set aside for the day. 12 centers established across the country already. 20 more planned by year's end. Not my initiative, Ibrahim corrected, watching as Fatima led a group of medical students through the facility. She had blossomed in her new role, her natural authority no longer constrained by circumstances. I merely removed obstacles. This has always been your vision. Our vision now, Ahmed replied. His gaze followed Ibrahim's to where Fatima was speaking with animated confidence to the students. A simple silver band now graced her left hand, matching the one Ahmed wore, their engagement announced just weeks earlier, with Ibrahim's blessing. She wants to establish a training program medical professionals who specialize in childhood trauma, says the need will outlast the current conflicts. She's right. Ibrahim nodded toward a small boy carefully making his way across the courtyard with the help of a cane. Coffee, the feverish child, recovering but still bearing the physical marks of his ordeal. Some wounds heal slowly, but they do heal. Ahmed's voice carried the quiet conviction of one who had witnessed both destruction and renewal. With proper care, they were interrupted by a small commotion near the center's entrance. Bakari, the former gang leader now serving community service as part of his reduced sentence, was having an intense discussion with one of the administrative staff. Ibrahim had insisted on this particular piece of restorative justice, arguing that redemption required opportunity. Problem? Ibrahim asked as they approached. A miscommunication about supplies, Bakari explained, his former swagger replaced by something more subdued. The medical delivery was incomplete. I was explaining that we should inventory everything before signing the acceptance form. He's right, Ahmed affirmed. Standard protocol. Ibrahim noted the exchange with satisfaction. Redemption was never guaranteed, but the possibility alone justified the risk. Bakari might never become a model citizen, but he had found purpose protecting rather than exploiting his community. A tug at Ibrahim's sleeve pulled his attention downward. Issa, the little girl who had proudly shown off her writing skills on that first night, looked up at him with serious eyes. She had grown in these months, her face fuller, her eyes brighter, though still carrying shadows no child should bear. Teacher, she said solemnly, using the title she had given him since learning his real identity. I made this for you. She pressed a folded paper into his hand before darting away to rejoin her friends. Ibrahim unfolded the gift. A carefully drawn picture of what appeared to be himself. Ahmed and Fatima surrounded by small figures representing the children. Above them all, written in now steady lettering, "My family." Something tightened in his chest as he showed the drawing to Ahmed, who smiled with unguarded warmth. "She has the right idea," Ahmed said. "Family is who stands beside you when the world falls apart." The official ceremony began with speeches Ibrahim had insisted be kept brief. When his turn came to address the gathering, he stepped forward, not as president, but as a man who had rediscovered his purpose. "This center exists because one person refused to accept that some children are beyond help," he began, gesturing toward Ahmed. "It thrives because another believed her education should serve those most in need." His gaze found Fatima in the crowd. "It represents what becomes possible when we recognize our shared humanity across the boundaries of position and privilege." As he spoke, Ibrahim noticed a small figure working his way carefully through the assembled guests. Kofi, moving slowly but determinedly on his cane, approached until he stood directly before Ibrahim. "Mr. President?" the boy asked, his voice small but clear. Ibrahim paused in his speech, kneeling to meet the child at eye level. "Yes, Kofi. Are you really the president?" The question held genuine curiosity rather than awe. "Or are you just pretending? Like that night when you held my hand?" A murmur of laughter rippled through the crowd. Ibrahim considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Both, I think," he answered honestly. "I wear the title of president like a uniform, something I put on to serve a purpose. But the man who held your hand while you were afraid, that wasn't pretending. That was just me, as I truly am." Kofi nodded, accepting this answer with the straightforward wisdom of children. From his pocket, he withdrew a small carved wooden figure, a simple human shape clearly fashioned by inexpert hands. "I made this," he said, pressing it into Ibrahim's palm. "To remember." The gift, more precious than any official honor he had received, rendered Ibrahim momentarily speechless. Before he could respond, Kofi had already begun his careful journey back through the crowd. Rising to his feet, Ibrahim found himself facing a sea of expectant faces. The practiced words of his prepared speech no longer seemed adequate. "We speak often of rebuilding our nation," he said instead, the wooden figure warm in his hand. "Of infrastructure, security, economic recovery. These things matter. But Burkina Faso isn't just roads and buildings and institutions. It's people, especially its children, who will inherit whatever world we create through our actions today." He gestured to the center around them. "This place exists because someone saw suffering and refused to look away. Because someone recognized that true security comes not just from strong borders, but from strong communities. Because someone understood that leadership means nothing if it doesn't improve the lives of those most vulnerable." His gaze found Ahmed and Fatima standing side by side, their hands lightly touching. "I followed my guard one night, expecting to uncover treachery. Instead, I found a model for what leadership should be. Not distant authority, but active service. Not power over others, but power used for others." As the ceremony concluded, and the crowd dispersed into celebratory groups, Ibrahim found himself drawn into conversation after conversation. Not as president addressing subjects, but as one citizen among many sharing hopes and concerns. It was exhausting in ways formal functions never were, yet energizing in its authenticity. Evening found him sitting on a bench in the center's courtyard, watching as staff prepared for the children's dinner. Ahmed approached, carrying 2 cups of the sweet mint tea that had become their shared ritual. "Successful day," Ahmed observed, joining him on the bench. "Very." Ibrahim accepted the tea gratefully. "Though my security detail aged several years when that woman from the eastern neighborhood cornered me about her roof repairs." Ahmed laughed. "She has that effect. Even Fatima steps carefully around her." They sat in companionable silence, sipping tea as the courtyard filled with children lining up for dinner. Among them, Ibrahim spotted Isa, helping Kofi navigate the queue, her small hand steady on his elbow. "What did you imagine?" Ibrahim asked suddenly. "When you started this place, did you think it would become this?" Ahmed considered the question. No. Honestly, I thought it might last a few months before being shut down. Just enough time to help a handful of children. He watched the orderly dinner service with quiet pride. Dreams grow when given space. Like children, Ibrahim agreed. Like nations, Ahmed added softly. As twilight deepened around them, Ibrahim reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. A suspicious leader following his guard into the night, discovering not betrayal but a path toward becoming the leader his country truly needed. A president learning that true authority comes not from distance but from connection. We should return to the palace soon, Ahmed noted, ever mindful of security protocols even on this unofficial day. Soon, Ibrahim agreed, but made no move to leave. For this moment he was content to sit in the gathering darkness, watching as small lights came on around the courtyard, each one pushing back the shadows a little further, each one a reminder that even the deepest night eventually yields to dawn. In following his guard, Ibrahim Traoré had found not the betrayal he feared, but the purpose he had lost. Not an ending, but a beginning. Not a separate life, but a reconnection to the life he was meant to live all along. Did this story touch your heart? Has something similar ever happened to you or someone you know? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If you enjoyed this journey of transformation and discovery, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that reveal the truth about human connection, dignity, and the unexpected moments that change lives forever. Every like, comment, and share helps these stories reach others who need to hear them. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments.